Hello everyone, my name is Farmer Phil, and in today's video we're going to be doing something a little bit different, something I've never really done. We're going to be going around the farm, just myself, and going to be looking at all the different things that I'd love to change over in the farm over the next 5, then to 10 to 15, and then God knows when it'll get done, but things I'd like to get done around the farm. Just for a video because there's not much else going on. A few people said they'd like to see it. And it's one of them things I've never really done much about. I never really talk about what I plan on doing much in the future, because it's one of them things I could say I'm going to do it and then maybe things change, plans change, and then it never gets done. I always kind of feel like a bit of an idiot when you don't get to do the things you said you were going to do. So I don't really like talking about it. But for the sake of a video, we're going to go through it all and see what's going to happen, and well, over the next 5 or so years you get to see how much of it I actually get done. And another thing, just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to tell Father Phil not to watch this video, and when I get a chance I'll get him to go through the yard and point out all the things he'd like to change. And then because as much as I'd point out all the things I'd like to change, the reality is everything I want to do will end up being some bit in between myself and my father, as there's two of us at it and live too, so it'll be a menagerie of what everybody wants, not just what I think is needed. So we'll do one with Father Phil and see what he thinks, and have him not influenced by me, just to see what the crack is. We're starting at the start of the yard, and we are in currently our meal shed, and I don't know how well, but you could be able to hear the starlings, them bloody yolks, which are giving us woeful bother. So one of the things I would love to do with this shed is take the canopy off it, rid of that canopy, put in 3 roller doors so that it'd keep out the birds, put up another shed to take away the 2 combines, the 2 tractors and the mill, and then turn each bay into storage. So extend that mass concrete wall right round the back and then up the centre to each middle pillar, and have 3 individual meal bays. Could be used for storing grain, could be used for storing kinds of meal. With the roller doors, it's going to leave it bird proof, and of course fill them holes at the back and leave it a fully bird proof shed. The other thing as well I would do is, you can see there is yes, it is quite messy there. It's due to be tidied like most things, but there is quite a bit of a ramp up into there, and it can be, it's not the most difficult, but it's a bit of a pain to back into it. And we also, down here in the cattle yard, we do need to put down some new concrete where you see the water. So something I'd love to do is, starting from the pillars of the shed down to where the water's lying there, where we need to put new concrete to, put in a gradient slope over that, which hopefully wouldn't be too much, that when you're coming in down here you wouldn't be thrown too much to the left. But that's something I'd love to do with this shed, and I think it would fall into maybe the 5 years. It's something we should get done. I'd like to think we'll do within 5 years, is get this shed turned into a proper meal shed, roller doors, and just a proper job. So we're just here at the back of the meal shed, maize pit, flying through it. But this area out here, I know I did say, you kind of already know because I did say it, we have stone there, and the plan is to get this all levelled off here. It's doing nothing at the minute, there's lots of scrap in it. All levelled up, levelled off, stone down, and put up a machinery shed, starting just about from the second bay of the meal shed all the way right down to the end of the silage pit. Lean-to shed, 40-foot span, that's what I'm hoping. But just that, hoping now, this is one of these things that I have kind of lined up for this year. I am hoping to make a start at that this year by putting up some sort of a machinery shed, whether it's 2 bay, 3 bay, 1 bay or a 4 bay. I'm hoping for a 4 bay, but it all comes down to funds, what I have available come midsummer kind of time is what I'm aiming for, to put up a 20-foot to the eaves, 40-foot bay lean-to shed. That's what I'm hoping. And then it's either going to be 1, 2, 3 and maybe 4 bays, depending on what the funds are like. But I will put up some kind of a shed, because we do need more machinery storage, as everybody knows. The yard is always quite full of kit, and it's always in the way. but being able to move our put sheds up out here, putting a good gravel basin around, it means that we'll be able to come in at the back of the landings there, machinery, come in and park them, and it keeps them separate from the rest of the yard, and it just, I think it makes such a difference to all the bollocks we have moving around machinery. So we're just at the back of the, as we call it, the pig shed, where the Waylands are all in at the minute. We sprayer obviously shouldn't be there, but we've nowhere else to put it. We'll touch on a bit on that later. And we have our tire storage there, but one of the things I think will be done within 5 years, it may just go outside 5 years, but that would be a purpose built calf shed. The design of it is basically already, it's in our minds, we have it already done, but it's either going to the left or the right of the pass. If we go to the left of the pass, we have pre-existing paddock where the calves go anyways, happy days. We go to the right, it's going on to the quarry field, so we will have to end up letting out the quarry field out of tillage into grass, so that we can do what we always do, let the calves out. But that is the decision where that goes, and hopefully within the 5 year period it may stretch outside that. Just, it's one of them things, it's going to be probably one of the most costly sheds that we've ever put up on the farm. If we ever, when we go to do it, it is something we do need, but it's just going to be very costly, because if you're going to do it, it has to be done to the top notch, the best of the best. You can't half-ass it. So just walking down, the guineas are on the loose, and the ducks as well, but the guineas, just for anyone who is asking, the guineas will keep the starlings away from their immediate area. So where they are now, there won't be starlings, but the other end of that shed there will be starlings. So yeah, still battling the starlings, but we are making a bit of headway. 2 bangers going, the guinea fowl and the now laser, but still getting it hard to keep them out of the yard. But anyways, moving on. This shed here, the old shed in the yard, over 100 years old at this point. This shed doesn't see much use. There's an old milking parlour in it, have the buyers there, where we have a lot of chickens, chicken house in at the far end. We were rearing calves in it up there. Shed has fallen there, but just assume that that gets fixed at some point, which I do hope to get it done. But when I made the video on this shed, it must have been last year, someone said, why don't you raise the roof so you can get in? And that was just like a never thought of it before moment, and that I do intend on getting done. Hopefully within the next 5 years I get all this side here all risen enough that we can get the telly in, and then them sheds become a heck of a lot more usable. We get the upper pens up there for lives, goats, the pigs, all that kind of crack. Get the roof risen, put in a new concrete floor, and put in, leave it that we could put in a calf feeder, and we could rear calves all year round, which would slightly change up the farming end of things, because it'd mean we'd have a supply of cattle to kill all year round, instead of having cattle to kill for 6 months of the year and then no cattle to kill to the following 6 months. But being able to rear calves year round would be a big advantage to us. Even if it was just a small number, it's just enough to keep bills paid, really, that's all. If that was there, you could pick out your bulls the night before they go, and you could run them in there into individual pens. Getting that you could clean it out, a new floor in it, fix the roof. That becomes very, very usable. So we're looking at the dung pit now, which was our old silage pit. That's why we have such a great dung pit with walls and all around, and so big. It's an old silage pit. But one thing that is threatening to be done this long time now, it could be 7 years being talked about, so it may happen relatively soon, is put up one of them, it's like a polytunnel. I think they call them sheep tunnels or calf tunnels. We've seen them at the plough match many a time, and it's been talked about quite a lot. Every ploughing match we seem to talk about it. But levelling off the wall right round, including where the old cubicle shed is, and then putting it on top of the wall, so having quite a high shed, or it's not even going to be a shed, it's going to be a polytunnel is what we're thinking of putting up, making sure there's no end on the far end, so that if wind comes into it, it'll blow right through it and hopefully not take it off. That's what we're thinking of doing. It will help with our slurry storage, because at the minute all the rainwater there is being collected and we don't have the best slurry storage, but we're lucky we have some slatted sheds on an out farm we can bring stuff to, and it'll get us by. But getting a roof over that will stop the water problem, and also give us some extra storage for bales of straw or machinery throughout the year. It may get done within 5 years, it may not. It could push outside. It's been talked and threatened about a long time now, but it's just one of them things we could be talking about for a long time yet. Now, we are just at the front of the hay shed, I think is the best way of putting it. So where our calf feeders, you can see them washed in there, you can see the green light on and just have it on standby. But this area here, one thing I'd like to do, maybe it'll be at the 5 year, maybe before, I'd say it'd be around the 5 year point, because it's not going to be the most expensive job. If we've got second-hand stuff, we could get it done. Obviously, I don't think we do it ourselves, but we'll probably get me cousin or someone. I have a cousin is a builder, get him to do it. But love to see this hay shed and lean-to expanded out as far as the old grain bin. This whole area here, back up to there. But, and this is the big but, make that lean-to a fair bit higher, big enough that the self-propelled sprayer will back into there, and have it as a sprayer storage, because the chemical store is there, and that's our big tank for filling for the sprayer. There's old grain bins in there, and I'd love to see them taken out to give us extra space for calves in there. That shed works quite well. I know people say it's a low roof and yada yada yada, but that shed works probably, as at the minute, is the best calf shed we have by a good bit. It works quite well to take down them bins. And for those of you, there is 2 grain bins. There was 3, there was one there, but we got rid of that. I actually think I knocked bales into it, and that's how I got rid of it, otherwise it'd never been gone. Steel one there, and then we have an old tin one here, and that was the grain storage for years, but that has holes. That's just, yeah, it's outdated for us at the minute. That's why they don't get used. Actually, this tin bin, the holes are on the bottom of it, but that's been used for fencing storage and stuff like that. It's full of posts and wire and stuff for air storage and more calf space, hopefully within 5 years. So now we are on top of the silage pit, so this would fall into the 10 to 15, but all along here our silage pit is surrounded by a bank wall of clay, and that is something I would very, very much like to take out and put in proper mass concrete silage walls. It would also fall into part of expanding my shed out this way and taking away all that clay, but definitely within 10 to 15 years I'd like to think I'd have a wall around this silage pit, just to leave it that little bit easier. So within the 10 to 15 year bracket, this area here, the maize pit, well, both are maize in them now, but we call the smaller one the crimp pit and the bigger one maize or whole crop pit. I would like to see sheds go up over them. You can see how it was always kind of in the plan, because the pillars are there. I would like to see over the smaller pit a very high roofed shed, big shed that you could tip an articulated lorry in if it was needed. Not that I do intend on ever having to buy meal again, but it's one of them things, if you do it you may never need it, and it'll leave it handy for tipping the likes of the big Broughton or any big grain trailers into the yard. And also then putting a shed over this, probably an A-frame shed running from pillar to pillar, and having it all this area here as the grain storage, meal storage kind of a thing. So it takes it away from having it down at the far end of the yard where we have cattle, and it's a dual purpose and you can't tip trailers that well in that shed. Just get it all brought up to up here, just to simplify the grain operation, rolling the whole lot, make lives heck of a lot easier. So down in this corner down here I have 2 kind of plans. So avoid all the machinery, because it's either scrap and does need, yeah, we're just in between getting work done and getting tidy and done. But one thing I'd love to do out here is, now we have the crush stutter side there, and it works quite well, and let's assume that all the gates are hanging from a get-go and that. But one thing I'd love to do, because that yard works quite well, but I'd love to put in a 3rd pen in here, so kind of you can see where that gate is from the wall back going out and then back up, just making a nice pen there that you could put 16, 18, a load of bulls, whatever would fit in a load. I think it's 18 bulls, that's big enough for that. with a specialised kind of a side gate that's easy loading of a ramp up into a trailer, just to leave a little bit easier, because at the minute it works, we load them through the chute, but you put 8 bulls or 6 bulls into the chute and then you have to run the rest up through the pen, and it's a little bit of a pain because you're trying to get bulls up the chute, and it's not a job you can do by yourself. Even when it comes to loading any of the cattle, we load all through the chute, and you can't load cattle into a trailer by yourself, but putting in another pen here especially for loading would help that. So as part of doing another pen the other side of that silver gate, just the other side of the crush, the other thing that I would do to make it work is move the crush gate back to there, move that steel pillar and gate up to there, and then put my gates running across there, and end up having it that I have a 3-way divide when I'm working cattle, for dividing cattle. At the minute it's cattle in, mark them, spray them, and then try and take them out. But if we could get that operation done in the crush, that you just had a divide your crush gate and a dividing gate just behind that you could go left, right or forward, you could divide a pen of cattle 3 ways, and that would be absolutely awesome and would definitely speed up working cattle. What I do while we're here is put in a second pit here, especially if I do ever go to replace, turn up there into grain storage, then I will need another pit. So wherever I decide to go with me crush, from there put a wall going back down that way, increase the height of the wall along the timber shed, put that as a solid concrete wall all the way to the bottom of the timber shed, and raise the floor of in here up. That is not the lowest point. As you can see, all the water of the upper yard drains into this lower area, so it kind of gathers dirt and muck, and it's never that pleasant. So all along timber shed, mass concrete wall, but that is in the 10 to 15 years. It's one of them things, that will happen when that happens, because one will have to happen before the other, so if you know what I mean. So we are on what I like to call the pretty side of the timber shed. It's probably the only side where there's no bits of timber missing off it. One thing that hopefully will happen before the end of this year, and that's going to be that the timber shed is going to get a bit of a touch up. All the jobs for the summer is going to be power washing and painting the shed. We'll try and get as much as we can done. I'd like to think we'll definitely at least get this side done, maybe get some of the other sides done, and hopefully get a few new timbers put in and just dicky it up, make it look presentable, because currently it makes the farm look very run down because it's missing a lot of timber. It's a bit of an eyesore. Furthermore, on the shed, now I know people probably say knock it down, build a big beef unit above it. I'm not convinced about doing that. If I'm going to build a beef unit, it's going to go somewhere else. I would intend on slightly changing the layout a bit, because one thing that is quite a pain is having the feeding passage here where the cattle yard is, because when you work cattle, as you can see, this area is a bit mucky and you end up bringing it into the passageway, which isn't exactly great. Also, it's a bit of a pain. Cattle are able to push open the gates and to get in, and it's just, I'd like to block that up, put in extra cubicles, change all that for door or for hanging gates, put in steel and all of that whole crack, and maybe expand more feeding area at the bottom end of the shed, just to make it slightly more user friendly. It is a bit of a pain, and I'm holding the microphone because my bracket is broke for holding it. It's one of them things. Will it ever get done? It will get tidied up. That will happen. I'll make sure that happens. But whether I actually get changing the design layout of it to try and make it a little bit more user friendly, God only knows whether that'll happen or not. So we are just at the back of the sheds. Pigs are there in the orchard, but this area out here, I would very, very much like to see a bit of a cattle race going in. So instead of having to get, as I call them, expensive gates, machinery to let cattle out the far end, having it that we have a specific go up, maybe to probably, I don't even know where, to some point along here from the castle wall back to the gates for door, or for the wire for the orchard, and put in concrete, everything from there back, put in crash barriers, couple of gates, and have it that it's a stock proof area for turning cattle out of the shed and down and into the cattle yard. And I would like to think I get done within 5 years, but it's just one of them things. I know I've said it before in a video I want to get done, but I know Father Phil doesn't really like that idea. He wants to put gates instead of crash barriers so that the gates could be taken down and moved somewhere else, but I want to put something in permanent that cannot be taken down and brought somewhere else. A heck of a lot handier when moving cattle out of the slatted shed. And now we are in the God knows when or if it'll ever get done category. And we are just at the back of the Slurry store, back in the pig shed, just kind of heading down through the bottoms towards the river, which is still 100 meters, actually it's 150 or 200 meters, no, it's 200 meters away from the reception pit, because the clip just ends just before the river. This area here, obviously, is at the end of that shed, and it's also dung pitch just over there, and the Slurry store is there. And there's also an old cubicle shed just over there with two 165s in it. So this area here has been earmarked for a long time as our expansion area for cattle housing, for beef unit, for slatted tanks. The land all falls away, so it's quite easy. If there's anywhere to put a slatted tank in, it's here. We've talked about for a long time whether we do it a big massive cattle shed like what Tom Pemberton has done, specific for 200 or 300 head of cattle, and do a right big job in here. But one of them things, we either do it little by little or we go all out. We rely quite heavily on rented ground for our grazing ground to be able to run as many calves and cattle and bulls as we do. The price of rented ground in our area has gone through the roof, and it comes down to a thing of what the price is going to be like when our leases come up for renewal, because we can pay so much, but there is a point where it becomes too much. And if it becomes too much and we start losing rented ground and we can't have as many cattle as we have, then it becomes a thing of, well, you don't really need to put up a big massive shed. Something may happen within 5 years, nothing may ever happen out here, and you never know, we may put up a big massive shed. It's one of them things. And the Slurry store, which you've seen behind me, and I know people see our Slurry store is quite old. The reason for two blue straps on it is a bit like a peace of mind bit of an insurance policy. That tank has been there a long time, and it was a second-hand tank when we bought it. Structurally it seems fine. We don't fill it because of that reason. We have extra tanks on out farms that we've rented. Again, another reason why it's hard to plan too far ahead of yourself when you're on rented ground. But that is something that we need to replace within the next 5 years, whether we go for a Slurry store, lagoon, or a big slatted tank. We don't know, but that's why you see straps on it. It's just peace of mind. So we've had a look around the yard at the things I'd change. They're the things in my mind at the minute I would change. I'll say it one more time. Just imagine that all the gates in the yard are sorted and there's all steel pillars and everyone's hanging nice and neatly, because some of it is and some of it isn't at the minute. But these are all things that will get done. Just about the layout of the yard, surprisingly, maybe you don't think so, but let me know in the comments, I think it works quite well, because all our meal or silage or maize, it's all in the one area. It's the first area in the yard, so it's a relatively clean area. Our muck, so where our dung heap is and our slurry storage is in the middle of all the cattle, so when you're drawing from either end of the yard into it, it's all equal distance, it's all in the middle, so it works quite well that way. I always thought it worked quite well that way. Our cattle, our crush, our cattle handling area then is in the middle of the yard. All the sheds are easy got into it, with the exception of the pig shed, which is the weanlands, where the weanlands are, yearlings are at the minute, at the bottom of the yard. Biggest area of the yard fails on, and that's machinery, because it gets abandoned everywhere. We're always moving stuff around, everything's in the way of everything, and that's why hopefully this year, if I can get the funds put together, there's a machinery shed going up there. Whether it's just one of these bays or whether I actually get to go full 4 bays, I don't know, but definitely something's going up out there. Now I know the yard looks dilapidated, I get it all the time, but these things will improve. And I know what people will say, why don't you just put all your YouTube money into the farm and tidy things up? But like Tom, and fair play to Tom, he's doing a fantastic job there, but my biggest fear is the YouTube thing. It's finite, it's not going to last forever. To be perfectly honest, I'm making good money on YouTube at the minute, but it's not going to last forever. And without pulling out the knicker drawer and going through how the farm partnership and the farm works and the higher contracting side works and machinery and all that, and trying to dissect that I need to put my money into machinery so that I have a means of making money. If YouTube die, it may not die, it may keep growing, it may scale back. It's one of the things you don't know, but I need to put my money into something that's going to put money back in my pocket for myself, so that I have something to fall back on if the YouTube thing doesn't work out. We run the farm as a farm partnership. We run the farm as a self-sufficient, whatever it makes goes back into itself, tries to get itself out of the debt it got into from the 2016 grain loss, which hopefully someday I'll make a video on that, because I have pictures and videos from the time of just how terribly bad things went wrong. If there's anything that'll ever break you, it's tillage farming, because when it goes wrong, it goes wrong. And just, yeah, as I said, it's knicker drawer, farm partnership, contracting, who owns this, who owns that. It's messy, it's not something for YouTube, but if you can understand the gist of things. But that's it, that's kind of where we're at. I hope you enjoyed today's video and a little bit of the understanding and reasoning behind why we do and why not we do. But I do hope within the next 2 to 3 years the farm will look a good bit tighter than what it is now, because yes, it is rough, it is untidy, but hopefully with a little bit of extra help and a little bit of TLC, we'll get a lot of things straightened out. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any comments, any suggestions on anything I said in the 5-year plan, stick them in the comments down below. We're going to leave it at that for today's video. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. Videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday. That's it for me. Good luck.